Picture the kitchen at 8:47 on a Tuesday night, the overhead light buzzing faintly, and your mother sitting alone with a stack of bills spread out like a losing hand of cards. You're 8 years old, and you're not supposed to understand what that look on her face means. But you do. Your chest tightens in a way you don't have a name for yet, and something in you, something small and quiet, makes a decision that will outlive your childhood. I will never be the reason she looks like this again. You don't announce it. You just start clearing the dishes without being asked, hushing your little brother before he can start a fight, learning to read the exact weight of her silence. That night, you become something new. Not a child exactly, more like a small, steady presence, built to absorb pressure so she doesn't have to carry all of it alone. Here's the part nobody tells you. That decision doesn't stay in the kitchen. It doesn't stay in your childhood at all. I've talked to enough people who grew up this way to know it becomes the architecture of an entire adult life, the invisible code running underneath every relationship you build, every job you take, every time someone tries to get close, and you quietly, politely, keep them at arm's length. The very thing that once kept your family standing may now be the exact thing standing between you and the love you actually want. Tonight, we're going back to that kitchen table, because understanding what happened there might be the only way to finally put something down you've been carrying for 30 years. We love this story, don't we? The kid of the single mum who grew up fast, who could make dinner before they could reach the top shelf, who somehow turned a house missing one parent into a house that still felt, against the odds, like it was holding together. We call them mature beyond their years. We call them old souls. We tell them, often with real admiration in our voice, that they must be so strong, and they usually are strong. That's not the lie. The lie is in what we assume that strength means. Because look at how we frame it, even now, even as adults looking back. Society hands out exactly two roles here, the tragic case who never recovered, or the inspiring exception who beat the odds. There's no third option in the popular imagination. No space for someone who is both remarkably capable and quietly unraveling at the same time. So if you were the one who got good grades, who held down a job at 16, who never seemed to need anything from anyone, the world simply closed the file. Case solved. Kid turned out fine. Nobody ever went back to check the wiring. And it wasn't just the outside world doing this. Inside the family, it became a kind of badge. The us against the world thing. The quiet pride your mother took in how capable you'd become. How you never made things harder than they already were. Being needed like that can feel a lot like being loved. So you leaned into it. You got better at it. You became the reliable one. The one who didn't cry when things fell apart. The one everyone else could lean on. And every time someone called you mature, or responsible, or an old soul, it confirmed the same quiet belief. This is working. Keep going. Here's what nobody stopped to ask. Not your teachers, not your relatives, not even you. Mature according to what standard? Exactly. A 12-year-old managing the grocery budget isn't a sign of advanced development. It's a sign that a 12-year-old is doing a job that was never supposed to be theirs. We were so busy admiring the finished product, the composed adult who seemingly came out the other side unscathed, that nobody thought to ask what it cost to build them. We looked at the calm and mistook it for peace. We looked at the competence and mistook it for healing. And that mistake, that one small, well-intentioned mistake, is exactly where this story actually begins. There's a clinical name for what happened at that kitchen table, and it's worth knowing because it strips away the flattering language we usually wrap around it. Psychologists call it parentification, the process by which a child takes on the emotional or practical role of a parent, long before their nervous system is built to handle it. Not because anyone forced them to in so many words, but because the vacancy existed and someone had to fill it. You weren't wise beyond your years. You were a child, doing an adult's job, and your body kept the receipt, even after your mind learned to call it normal. Here's where it gets more interesting than the word itself. What you actually built in that house wasn't empathy, even though it looks almost identical from the outside. Empathy is a bridge. It lets you feel towards someone, understand them, and still walk back to yourself when you're done. What you built was something else entirely. A hypervigilance system, a radar that never fully powers down. Empathy chooses when to open. Hypervigilance doesn't get a choice. It's a perimeter fence, always scanning, always braced. Because in your house, missing a warning sign wasn't a small mistake. It was the difference between things holding together and things falling apart. You can still see this system running in you today, usually in the quiet, ordinary moments. You walk into a meeting and clock the tension between two co-workers before either of them says a word. You hear your partner's key in the door and know their mood from the sound of their footsteps alone, before they've even said hello. People call this intuition, and in a way it is, but it didn't come from some natural gift. It came from years of having to read a single exhausted parent well enough to keep the whole household from tipping over. You didn't choose to become this attuned. You had to, and your body has been keeping score this entire time, even when your mind insisted everything was fine. A nervous system that never learns how to stand down doesn't just create a personality trait, it creates a physiological state, chronically elevated cortisol, sleep that never quite reaches the deepest, most restorative stage. Because some part of you is still listening for a door, a sigh, a shift in tone, a body that stays mildly braced for impact, even on an ordinary Tuesday, with nothing wrong at all. This isn't weakness. It's a system doing exactly what it was trained to do, in a world that no longer requires it. But here's the part that's easy to miss underneath all this competence. While you were becoming so skilled at reading everyone else, you were quietly losing track of yourself. There wasn't room to ask what you needed, because needing something felt like one more thing for an already overwhelmed household to carry. So you stopped asking. You became less of a person with your own weather and more of a mirror, reflecting back whatever calm the room required, disappearing a little more each time you did it well. That's the real cost of parentification, not just the lost childhood, but the slow erosion of a self that never got the chance to fully form in the first place. Fast forward 20, 30 years, and that same wiring is still running, except now it's not managing a household budget, it's managing a marriage. You became exactly the partner everyone said you'd be. Easy, undemanding, endlessly capable. People call this low maintenance, and they mean it as a compliment, but sit with what it actually requires. It requires you to want almost nothing out loud. It requires you to have gotten so good at not being a burden that you've forgotten how to be a priority. That's not emotional health. That's a kind of quiet starvation dressed up as an admirable trait. You've spent so long making sure you never need too much that when someone finally offers to give you something, you don't know where to put it. We call people like you the rock in a relationship, and it sounds like the highest compliment there is, until you actually think about what a rock does. It doesn't move. It doesn't ask for anything, and eventually, without anyone meaning it cruelly, it gets walked on, because it never gave anyone a reason to think it could bruise. You tell yourself you're the peacemaker, the one who smooths things over before they escalate, but look closer, and you'll find something less noble underneath. You're not resolving the conflict. You're surrendering early, because to your nervous system, a raised voice was never just in disagreement between two adults. It was the sound of the one pillar, holding everything up, starting to crack. So you fold, every time, and call it maturity. And if that marriage ended, if you're one of the many people in this exact stage of life, learning how to date again in your 40s or 50s, this old wiring shows up in a new and particularly cruel way. You spent decades in a relationship where you asked for almost nothing, and now you're sitting across from someone new who keeps asking what you want, and you genuinely don't know. Not because you're complicated, but because wanting things out loud was never safe to practice. Learning to let someone care for you at 50, after a lifetime of being the one who cares for everyone else, might be one of the hardest and most disorienting things you ever do. This same engine, though, didn't only cost you. It also built something in you that most people simply don't have, and it's worth naming plainly. A kind of cognitive surplus, a strategic anticipation that lets you walk into a room, a negotiation, a crisis, and map the emotional and logistical terrain before anyone else has even noticed there's terrain to map. You lead without needing permission. You see the structural crack in a project 3 steps before it becomes a visible failure. People call it instinct. It's actually a childhood spent doing risk management for an entire household, repurposed for a boardroom. But here's where it turns. Usually somewhere in your 40s or 50s, right around the peak of the career, this exact skill set built for you. You reach the title, the corner office, the thing you spent 30 years proving you deserved. And instead of arrival, you feel something closer to static. A flatness you can't quite explain to anyone, because from the outside, you've clearly won. Nobody warns you that a system built entirely for crisis doesn't know what to do with a life that finally has some peace in it. So sometimes, without ever deciding to, you go looking for the next fire. Not because you enjoy the stress, but because stillness feels unfamiliar, in a way that borders on frightening. And if you have children of your own now, there's a question worth sitting with honestly, even though it's uncomfortable. Are you quietly doing to them what was done to you, just in a softer, more modern version? Does your child sense when you're overwhelmed and rush to make themselves smaller, easier, less trouble? Do you notice, and maybe even feel a flicker of relief, when they don't ask for much? If any of that lands a little too close, it doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you someone still running old code, and now at least, you're in a position to notice it before it gets handed down again. There's one more twist this story rarely gets told with. Your mother, the one you spent your childhood trying to protect, is getting older now. And many people in exactly your position find themselves standing at a familiar kind of table again, except this time, they're the one holding the finances, making the calls, carrying the weight. History doesn't just echo here, it repeats itself with a different cast, and you're once again the pillar, except now, there's no one left above you to eventually take the role back. Here's the part almost nobody warns you about. A system built entirely for war doesn't know how to exist in peacetime. Your nervous system was engineered in a crisis, calibrated to a household running on empty, and it never got the update that says the emergency is over. So even now, decades later, some quiet part of you keeps scanning for the next fire to put out, and if it can't find one, it will sometimes, without your permission, start one. Not because you enjoy chaos, because chaos is the only frequency your body has ever fully understood as normal. This is where the real burnout begins. And it doesn't look like exhaustion the way people expect. It looks like standing at the top of everything you built, the career, the family, the reputation for having it all together, and feeling a strange, hollow static where satisfaction was supposed to be. You've mastered the outside world so thoroughly that you've become a stranger to the one on the inside. Every accomplishment gets filed away almost instantly, because it was never really for you. It was proof, offered to a version of your childhood that isn't even here to receive it anymore. And underneath all of it, quietly, a single question starts pressing against the machinery you've spent your whole life running. Not a dramatic collapse, just a thought that shows up in the shower, or at a red light, or in the middle of a meeting you're technically leading. Who am I when I'm not being useful to someone? Sit with that for a second, because it deserves more than a passing thought. For most of your life, usefulness has been the entire foundation of your identity. It's how you earned safety in that house. It's how you've earned love, or something that felt close enough to it, in every relationship since. So the idea of existing without a task to complete, without a fire to manage, without someone who needs you, doesn't feel like rest. It feels, to the part of you still standing in that kitchen, like disappearing entirely. This is the moment the machine finally starts to redline. Not because you failed, because you were never actually built to run forever without maintenance, and you've been driving on empty for longer than anyone around you realizes, including, most of the time, yourself. But here's the thing about that emptiness you're so afraid of finding underneath all your usefulness. It isn't a void, it's a waiting room, and sitting in it, patiently, all this time, is the 8-year-old who decided, one ordinary Tuesday night, to stop being a child so someone else could keep standing. You were never the structural support beam. You were a kid at a kitchen table, and it's safe now, finally, to just be that. You are the architect, not the building you built. You are the pilot, not the machine you learn to fly. And letting go of the constant vigilance isn't a betrayal of everything that got you here. It might be the truest way to honor it. Your mother didn't carry what she carried, so that you could inherit the same exhausted watchfulness for the rest of your life. She carried it so you could eventually set it down. And if you have children of your own, this is the gift that actually breaks the cycle. Not another generation raised to believe love has to be earned through usefulness. You don't have to be the fixer to be worth loving. You never did. So tonight, maybe just start here. Think of the one thing you've been carrying that was never actually yours to hold. You don't have to solve it right now. Just notice it. Say it out loud if you can. And if this found you tonight, tell me in the comments what that one thing is. Let's start setting these things down, together. Thank you for watching.